The firehouse siren wailed, a scream that tore through the quiet of my heart. I'd always thought love was a spark, but for me, it was a smoldering ember, hidden in the pages of a journal I never meant anyone to read. Until Mateo found it, and everything changed. My name is Jamie Carter, a 27-year-old firefighter in the small town of Willow Creek, Pennsylvania. The firehouse was my second home, a place where sweat, grit, and loyalty forged bonds stronger than steel. But for me, it was also a crucible of secrets. Every day, I suited up alongside Mateo Alvarez, the man who'd unknowingly claimed my heart, and I buried my feelings deeper than the ashes we sifted through after a call. Mateo was everything I wasn't: bold, charismatic, with a laugh that could light up the darkest night. His dark eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and his hands, calloused from years of gripping hoses and axes, moved with a grace that made my chest ache. He was 30, a transplant from Miami, and the kind of guy who could charm anyone, from the chief to the old ladies at the community bake sale. But he was straight. At least, that's what I told myself, piecing together fragments of his life. Mentions of ex-girlfriends, casual flirts with the barista at the coffee shop. I never dared to hope otherwise. The firehouse was a microcosm of chaos and order. We were a tight crew: Elias, the rookie with a chip on his shoulder and a heart of gold; Clara, the veteran who could outlift any of us; and Chief Malone, a grizzled man who saw through bullshit but never pried. Then there was me, the quiet one, always scribbling in my journal during downtime. It was my sanctuary, a place to pour out the words I could never say aloud. I love him. I love the way he hums old salsa tunes when he thinks no one's listening. I love how he checks my gear before a call, like my safety matters more than his own. That journal was my confession, my curse. I kept it tucked in my locker, hidden beneath spare gloves and a faded photo of my mom, who'd passed when I was 16. She was the only one who'd ever known I was gay, back when I was a scared kid in a town that wasn't always kind to people like me. Willow Creek had changed since then, but not enough to make me feel safe bearing my soul. So, I wrote instead, letting ink carry the weight of my silence. It was a Tuesday in late September, the air crisp with the promise of fall, when everything started to unravel. We'd just come back from a brutal call, a warehouse fire that left us all smelling of smoke and regret. The crew was exhausted, sprawled across the lounge, but Mateo was still buzzing with adrenaline. "Carter, you good?" he asked, tossing me a bottle of water. His voice was warm, like always, but it hit me like a punch. I nodded, avoiding his eyes, and retreated to the locker room to change. I didn't notice my journal wasn't in its usual spot until later that night. Panic clawed at my throat as I tore through my locker, gloves and socks flying. It was gone. My heart pounded louder than the siren had. Had I left it out? Had someone taken it? The thought of those pages, my raw, unfiltered truth, being read by anyone, let alone Mateo, made my vision blur. "Looking for this?" Elias's voice cut through my spiral. He stood in the doorway, holding my journal, his expression unreadable. My stomach dropped. Elias was a good guy, but he was also a wild card, quick to tease and slow to filter. "Found it by the bunks," he said, tossing it to me. "You're lucky it wasn't Malone. He'd have a field day with your poetry." "It's not poetry," I snapped, snatching the journal. My face burned, but relief flooded me. It was safe, for now. I didn't know then that Elias wasn't the one I should have worried about. The next day, we were on kitchen duty, chopping vegetables for Clara's famous chili. Mateo was next to me, his arm brushing mine as he diced onions with infuriating precision. "You ever gonna tell me what's in that book of yours, Jamie?" he asked, his tone teasing but gentle. My knife froze mid-chop. He'd seen me writing before, had even asked about it once or twice, but I always deflected. "Just thoughts," I mumbled, hating how small my voice sounded. "Thoughts, huh?" He grinned, nudging my shoulder. "Deep ones, I bet. You've got that brooding artist vibe." I forced a laugh, but inside, I was screaming. If he only knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my bunk, journal open, pen hovering over a blank page. I wanted to write about Mateo, about the way his laugh made the firehouse feel like home, about how I'd give anything to know if he could ever feel the same. But fear stopped me. Instead, I wrote about the fire, the way the flames had danced like they were mocking us. It was safer that way. The days blurred into a routine of calls, drills, and stolen glances. I thought I'd dodged a bullet with the journal, but I was wrong. A week later, after a quiet shift, I found a note slipped into my locker, written in Mateo's unmistakable scrawl. Meet me at the back lot. Midnight. My heart stopped. Why? What did he know? I told myself it was nothing, maybe just a late-night chat about work. But deep down, I feared the truth. Midnight came, and I found him leaning against the firehouse wall, bathed in moonlight. His face was serious, none of the usual warmth in his eyes. In his hand was my journal. "Jamie," he said, his voice low, "we need to talk." My breath caught, a sharp stab in my chest, as Mateo held up my journal like it was evidence in a crime scene. The firehouse loomed behind him, its silhouette stark against the night sky, and the air felt heavy with the weight of my exposed secrets. I wanted to run, to snatch the journal and disappear into the darkness, but his eyes pinned me in place. "Jamie," he said again, softer this time, stepping closer. "I didn't mean to read it. It fell out of your bag during the last call, and I saw my name." His voice was steady, but there was something raw beneath it, something I couldn't name. "Why didn't you tell me?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. Tell him what? That I'd been in love with him for 2 years, since the day he joined our crew and shook my hand with that easy grin? That every time he clapped me on the back or called me hermano, it was both a gift and a knife? I'd built walls around my heart, brick by brick, because loving him in silence was safer than risking everything. Our friendship, my place in the firehouse, the fragile peace I'd found in Willow Creek. "I didn't mean for you to see it." I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's just stupid stuff. Forget it." I reached for the journal, but he pulled it back, his eyes searching mine. "Stupid?" He shook his head, a flicker of frustration crossing his face. "You wrote pages about me, Jamie." "Pages? That's not stupid. That's—" He trailed off, running a hand through his dark hair. "I don't know what it is, but it's not nothing." I felt like the ground was crumbling beneath me. The back lot was quiet, the only sound the distant hum of crickets and the faint creak of the firehouse flagpole in the breeze. I wanted to tell him everything, how I'd memorized the curve of his jaw, how I'd lie awake imagining a world where I could hold his hand without fear. But the words stuck in my throat, choked by years of hiding. "I'm sorry," I said instead, my voice breaking. "I didn't want to make things weird. You weren't supposed to know." I turned to leave, my heart pounding, but his hand caught my wrist, warm and firm. "Don't," he said. "Don't walk away. Not yet." His grip was gentle, but it burned through me, igniting a hope I'd spent years trying to smother. I looked at him, really looked, and saw something in his eyes. Confusion, maybe, but also something deeper, something that scared me as much as it thrilled me. We stood there, frozen in the moonlight, the journal a silent witness between us. Finally, he let go, handing it back to me. "I need time to process this," he said. "But I'm not mad, Jamie. I need to understand." He walked back to the firehouse, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the weight of what I'd just lost, or maybe, just maybe, what I'd gained. The next few days were torture. Mateo didn't avoid me, but there was a new distance in his smiles, a hesitation in his usual ease. The firehouse felt different, like the air itself was holding its breath. Clara noticed, of course, she always did. "You two fighting?" she asked one morning, wiping down the engine. I shook my head, but her sharp eyes lingered. "Fix it, Carter. Whatever it is, you don't let it fester." I wanted to fix it, but I didn't know how. I kept my journal locked in my car now, too paranoid to leave it anywhere else. At night, I wrote less about Mateo and more about the fear gnawing at me. What if he told someone? What if the crew found out? Willow Creek wasn't the worst place to be gay, but it wasn't San Francisco either. I'd heard the slurs tossed around at the diner, seen the looks some folks gave when they thought no one was watching. The firehouse was my family, but even families could break. A week later, we got a call that shook us all, a house fire on the edge of town, a family trapped inside. The adrenaline kicked in, and for a few hours, my personal drama faded. Mateo and I worked side by side, pulling a kid out of a smoke-filled bedroom, our movements synchronized like always. But when he grabbed my arm to steady me as we stumbled out, his touch lingered a second too long, and our eyes met. For a moment, it was just us, the world reduced to the space between our breaths. Back at the station, we were heroes for a night, the crew clapping us on the back. But as the others celebrated, Mateo pulled me aside. "You're braver than you think, Jamie," he said quietly. "Not just in there. In here." He tapped his chest, and my heart stuttered. Was he talking about the fire, or something else? That night, I couldn't write. I sat in my apartment, staring at the journal, its pages a map of my unspoken love. I didn't know what Mateo was thinking, but his words echoed in my mind. Brave. Was I? I'd spent so long hiding, so long convincing myself that silence was my only option. But what if it wasn't? The next morning, I found another note in my locker, my place. 8 p.m. We're talking this out. My stomach twisted, but there was no running now. I'd face him, face whatever came next, even if it broke me. Mateo's apartment was a small, cluttered space above a bookstore in downtown Willow Creek, the kind of place that smelled like coffee and old wood. I stood outside his door at 8 p.m. sharp, my heart hammering like it did before a 5-alarm fire. When he opened the door, his smile was cautious but warm, and it nearly undid me. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. The room was a mix of chaos and comfort. Books stacked on every surface, a guitar leaning against the couch, a photo of his family in Miami on the wall. He gestured to a worn armchair, and I sat, clutching my journal like a shield. He took the couch, his knees bouncing slightly, a nervous habit I'd noticed during late-night shifts. "I've been thinking about what I read," he started, his voice low. "About you. About us." The word us hit like a spark in dry grass, and I gripped the journal tighter. "I didn't know you felt that way, Jamie. I mean, I knew you were quiet. But this," he gestured vaguely, like he was trying to grasp something intangible. "It's a lot." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to meet his eyes. "I never meant to put this on you," I said. "I wrote it to keep it in, not to let it out. I'm sorry if it freaked you out." "Freaked out?" He laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Maybe a little, but not in a bad way. It's just I've never thought about you like that. Or any guy, really." He paused, his brow furrowing. "But I've been thinking about it now. A lot." My breath hitched. Was he saying what I thought he was? Or was I reading too much into the way his eyes softened, the way his voice dropped? I wanted to ask, but fear clamped my mouth shut. Instead, I nodded, waiting for him to continue. Mateo leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You wrote about me like I'm some kind of hero," he said. "But I'm just a guy, Jamie. I mess up. I don't always know what I'm doing. And this," he pointed to the journal, "this makes me feel like I've been missing something right in front of me." I didn't know what to say. My whole life, I'd been taught to hide, to blend in, to never let anyone see the parts of me that didn't fit. But here was Mateo, holding my truth in his hands, not running away. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "I'm saying I don't know what I'm feeling yet," he admitted. "But I know I care about you, more than I realized, and I want to figure this out. Together." He reached out, his hand hovering over mine, then pulled back, like he wasn't sure he had the right. That small gesture broke something in me, a dam I'd built to keep my hope in check. We talked for hours, the conversation weaving between the heavy and the light. Memories of calls we'd run together, jokes about Elias's terrible cooking, and, slowly, the edges of something deeper. He told me about growing up in a loud, loving family, about the pressure to be the perfect son. I told him about my mom, how she'd hugged me when I came out to her at 15, promising me the world would catch up someday. It was the most honest I'd ever been with anyone. When I left his apartment, the night air felt different, charged with possibility. But the next day at the Firehouse, reality crashed back. Elias was watching us, his usual smirk replaced by a curious frown. "You two are weird lately," he said, tossing a rag at me. "Spill it, Carter." I brushed him off, but his words lingered. If Elias noticed, others would too. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk. Mateo and I were careful, keeping our conversations light in front of the crew, but stolen moments, Brushing hands in the kitchen, quiet talks in the back lot, became our secret language. I started to believe he might feel something too, something more than friendship. But doubt gnawed at me. What if he was just being kind? What if I was setting myself up for heartbreak? Then came the night of the annual Firehouse fundraiser, a big event at the community center. The whole town showed up, and we were all in dress uniforms, shaking hands and posing for photos. Mateo looked unfairly good, his jacket fitting just right, his smile dazzling the crowd. I caught myself staring, and so did Clara. "Careful, Jamie," she whispered, her tone gentle but firm. "Small towns talk." She was right. I saw the glances, the whispers behind hands. Willow Creek was progressive enough to have a pride flag at the library, but not everyone was on board. I felt exposed, like my journal was open for the whole town to read. When Mateo found me later, hiding out by the dessert table, he could tell something was wrong. "You okay?" he asked, his hand brushing my arm. I wanted to tell him everything, about the fear, the hope, the way loving him felt like standing on the edge of a burning building. But all I said was, "I'm fine, just tired." He didn't push, but his eyes said he wasn't buying it. That night, I wrote in my journal, "I'm falling, and I don't know if he'll catch me." The Firehouse was a pressure cooker after the fundraiser. Whispers followed me like smoke, curling around corners and lingering in the air. Elias kept shooting me looks, half curious, half suspicious, and even Chief Malone seemed to watch me more closely. I told myself it was paranoia, but the weight of being seen, really seen, made every step feel like walking through fire. Mateo was different too. He was still warm, still the guy who'd make coffee for the whole crew, but there was a new intensity in the way he looked at me. During drills, his hand would linger on my shoulder as he checked my harness. In the lounge, he'd sit closer than necessary, our knees brushing under the table. Each touch was a spark, but I couldn't shake the fear that we were playing with something that could burn us both. One night, after a quiet shift, he found me in the garage, cleaning the engine. The others were asleep, and the Firehouse was still, save for the hum of the fluorescent lights. "Jamie," he said, his voice soft but urgent. "Can we talk? For real this time?" I set down the rag, my heart racing. "Yeah, okay." We sat on the tailboard of the truck, the cold metal grounding me as I braced for whatever came next. He was quiet for a moment, his hands clasped tightly together. "I've been thinking about what you wrote," he said finally. "About how you see me. It's a lot to live up to, but it's also the most real thing anyone's ever said about me." He looked at me, his eyes dark and earnest. "I don't know if I'm ready for this, for us, but I know I feel something. And it's not just friendship." My breath caught, hope and fear colliding in my chest. "Mateo, you don't have to say that," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't want you to feel obligated." "Because of the journal." "Obligated?" He laughed, a low, frustrated sound. "Jamie, I'm not here because I feel sorry for you. I'm here because I can't stop thinking about you. About what it would be like to—" He stopped, his cheeks flushing. "To be closer." I stared at him, the world narrowing to the space between us. "What are you saying?" I asked, echoing our last conversation, needing to hear it clearly. "I'm saying I want to try," he said. "I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm scared as hell, but I want to figure it out. With you." He reached for my hand, his fingers warm and tentative, and I let him take it. For the first time, I didn't pull away. That moment was everything. Fragile, perfect, terrifying. But it didn't last. The next morning, Elias cornered me in the locker room. "What's going on with you and Alvarez?" he asked, his tone sharp. "People are talking, Jamie. You gotta be careful." "Careful," I snapped, my nerves frayed. "What's that supposed to mean?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I don't care who you love. But this town, the crew, not everyone's as open as they pretend to be. I'm just saying, watch your back." His words hit like a cold splash of water. I'd been so caught up in Mateo, in the possibility of us, that I'd forgotten the world we lived in. The Firehouse was my home, but it wasn't a bubble. If we weren't careful, this could cost us everything. Our jobs, our friendships, our place in Willow Creek. I didn't tell Mateo about Elias's warning. I couldn't bear to dim the light in his eyes, not when he was starting to look at me like I was more than a coworker. But the fear crept in, poisoning the moments we stole together. A brush of hands in the kitchen. A shared glance during a call. Each one felt like a risk, a step closer to exposure. Then came the night that changed everything. We were on a call, a barn fire that raged out of control. The heat was unbearable, the smoke thick enough to choke. Mateo and I were inside, searching for a trapped worker. We moved as a unit, our training overriding everything else. But when a beam collapsed, pinning Mateo under debris, time stopped. "Mateo!" I screamed, dropping to my knees beside him. His face was pale, his breathing shallow, but he was conscious. "Stay with me," I begged, clawing at the wood and metal. My hands bled, but I didn't care. I couldn't lose him. Not now, not ever. We got him out, the crew working together like a well-oiled machine. But as we rode back to the station, Mateo's hand found mine in the dark of the truck, hidden from the others. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice hoarse from smoke. "Not just tonight." I didn't know what to say. All I could do was squeeze his hand, hoping he felt everything I couldn't say. But as we pulled into the firehouse, I saw Elias watching us, his expression unreadable. The walls were closing in, and I wasn't sure we'd make it out unscathed. The barn fire left scars, some visible, some not. Mateo's arm was bandaged, his ribs bruised, but he was alive, and that was all that mattered. At the firehouse, the crew rallied around him, but I felt Elias's eyes on me, sharp and knowing. I tried to act normal, to bury myself in routine, but every time Mateo smiled at me, my resolve cracked. We hadn't talked about that night in the truck, his hand in mine, his whispered words. But the air between us had shifted, charged with something unspoken. We were careful, too careful, avoiding anything that could be misread by the others. Still, I caught Clara's raised eyebrow when Mateo brought me coffee, and I saw the way Chief Malone lingered when we stood too close. The firehouse was a family, but families could judge, and I wasn't ready to face that. One evening, after a long shift, Mateo found me in the bunk room, staring at my journal. "You haven't been writing," he said, sitting on the edge of my bunk. "Why not?" I shrugged, closing the notebook. "Haven't felt like it." The truth was, I was afraid to put my feelings on paper now, afraid of what they might cost us. He looked at me, his eyes soft but searching. "Jamie, I meant what I said," he murmured. "I want this us. But I know it's not easy for you. Hell, it's not easy for me either." He reached out, his fingers brushing mine, and I felt the world tilt. "I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you tell me to." I wanted to believe him, to let myself fall into the possibility of us. But Elias's warning echoed in my head, and the memory of those whispers at the fundraiser made my stomach churn. What if this ruins everything? I asked. "The crew. Our jobs, what if we can't handle it?" He was quiet for a moment, then said, "We're firefighters. We run into burning buildings for a living. If we can handle that, we can handle this." His confidence was infectious, but it didn't erase my fear. The next day, I found a note in my locker, not from Mateo, but from Clara. "Meet me at the diner. Noon." My heart sank. Clara was the heart of the crew, tough but fair, and if she'd noticed something, it wasn't good. I showed up at the diner, a greasy spoon on Main Street, and found her in a corner booth, sipping coffee. "Spill it, Jamie," she said, cutting to the chase. "You and Mateo. What's going on?" I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. "Nothing's going on," I lied, but my voice betrayed me. She leaned forward, her eyes kind but unyielding. "Don't bullshit me," she said. "I've seen the way you look at him, and I've seen the way he looks at you. But you need to be smart about this. The Chief's old school, and some of the guys, they won't get it." Her words stung, but they weren't a surprise. I'd spent my life bracing for rejection, but hearing it from Clara, someone I trusted, made it real. "What do I do?" I asked, hating how small I sounded. She sighed, softening. "Be honest. With yourself, with him. And if you're serious, talk to the chief before someone else does. You don't want him hearing it from the grapevine." I left the diner with a knot in my chest. Clara was right, but the thought of coming out to the chief, to anyone, made my palms sweat. I'd kept this part of myself locked away for so long. It felt like betraying a promise to my younger self, the kid who'd sworn to stay invisible. That night, Mateo invited me to his place again. We sat on his couch, a pizza box between us, and for a while, it felt normal, like we were just two guys hanging out. But then he moved the box and slid closer, his knee touching mine. "I want to kiss you," he said, his voice low and certain. "Is that okay?" My heart stopped, then surged. I nodded, unable to speak, and when his lips met mine, it was like every fire I'd ever fought. Fierce, consuming, alive. It was brief, tentative, but it changed everything. When we pulled back, his eyes were wide, like he was seeing me for the first time. "I've never done that before," he admitted, a shy smile breaking through. "But I want to do it again." We laughed, the tension easing, but reality crept back in. "We can't keep this a secret forever," I said. "People are already talking." He nodded, his expression serious. "Then we won't. But we do this on our terms, okay? Together." I wanted to believe it was that simple, but as I left his apartment, Clara's words haunted me. The firehouse was our world, but it wasn't ready for us. Not yet. And I wasn't sure I was either. The kiss changed everything, but it didn't make things easier. If anything, the world felt sharper, like every glance from the crew carried a hidden edge. Mateo and I were careful, keeping our distance at the firehouse, but it was like trying to hold back a wildfire with a garden hose. Every touch, every shared look, felt like a confession we weren't ready to make. I started writing again, filling my journal with the chaos of my heart. How Mateo's kiss had tasted like hope and danger, how I was terrified of losing him, of losing everything. But I was careful now, locking the journal in a drawer at home. I couldn't risk it falling into the wrong hands again. A week later, the chief called me into his office. My stomach churned as I sat across from him, his desk cluttered with photos of his grandkids and a half-empty coffee mug. "Carter," he said, his voice gruff, "you've been off lately. Something I should know about." I froze, my mind racing. Had Elias said something? Clara? I forced a smile, shaking my head. "Just tired, Chief. Long shifts." He studied me, his eyes narrowing, but he let it go. As I left his office, I felt like I'd dodged a bullet, but the dread lingered. The truth was a ticking bomb, and I didn't know how much time we had. Mateo sensed it too. One night, as we sat in his apartment, he took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "We need to tell them," he said. "The crew, at least. If we don't, they'll find out some other way, and it'll be worse." I pulled my hand back, panic rising. "And if they don't accept it? What then? This is my family, Mateo. I can't lose them." "You won't," he said, his voice fierce. "And if they can't handle it, that's on them, not us." His confidence was a lifeline, but it didn't erase the fear. I'd spent so long hiding. The idea of standing in the open felt like stepping into a blaze without gear. We decided to start small, telling Clara first. She'd already guessed, so it wasn't a shock, but her reaction surprised me. "I'm proud of you," she said, pulling me into a hug. "Both of you. But be ready, this won't be easy." She promised to have our backs, and for the first time, I felt like we weren't alone. Elias was next. We caught him after a shift, sitting in the lounge with a soda. "So, you two are a thing?" he asked, his tone more curious than hostile. I nodded, bracing for a jab, but he just shrugged. "Cool. Just don't make out in the engine bay, all right?" It was a small win, but it felt huge. The rest of the crew was harder. Some, like our medic, Sarah, were supportive, clapping us on the back like it was no big deal. Others, like Mike, a veteran with a chip on his shoulder, went quiet, his silence louder than words. The chief didn't say much, but his clipped, noted, when we told him felt like a warning. The town was worse. Word spread, as it always does in small places. I overheard snide comments at the grocery store, saw heads turn at the diner. Mateo took it in stride, his smile unshaken, but I felt each whisper like a cut. I started avoiding Main Street, sticking to the firehouse and my apartment, but there was no escaping the weight of judgment. Then came the call that tested us all, a factory fire, massive and unforgiving. We fought it for hours, Mateo and I side by side, our training overriding everything else. But when we got back to the station, exhausted and covered in soot, Mike pulled me aside. "You and Alvarez," he said, his voice low. "It's distracting." People are talking, and it's not good for the team. His words hit like a punch. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but part of me wondered if he was right. Were we putting the crew at risk? Was my love for Mateo a liability? I didn't tell Mateo about the conversation, but he knew something was wrong. Talk to me, he said that night, his voice soft but firm. Don't shut me out. I broke then, the fear and doubt spilling out. What if this is a mistake? I asked. What if we're tearing everything apart? He pulled me close, his arms steady, and for a moment, I let myself believe we could weather this. But the cracks were showing, and I didn't know how much longer we could hold on. The Firehouse felt like a battleground, each shift a test of endurance. Mateo and I were together, but we were fighting on two fronts, against the fires we ran into and the ones burning in the whispers around us. I wanted to be brave, like he was, but every cold shoulder from a coworker, every sidelong glance in town, chipped away at my resolve. One night, after a grueling call, I found my journal in my locker, open, a page torn out. My heart stopped. Someone had been in my things, had read my words again. The missing page was one I'd written after our first kiss, raw and unguarded. Panic clawed at me. Who had it? What would they do with it? I didn't tell Mateo right away. I couldn't bear to see the worry in his eyes, not when he was already carrying so much. But the next day, I found the page taped to the Firehouse bulletin board, my words exposed for everyone to see. I kissed him, and it was like coming home. The crew was quiet when I walked in, their eyes avoiding mine. Mike smirked, and I knew. Mateo was furious. Who did this? He demanded, ripping the page down. No one answered, but the silence was deafening. Chief Malone called us into his office later, his face unreadable. This can't happen again, he said. You two need to keep your personal lives out of the station. Understood. Yes, sir, we said, but it felt like a betrayal. We weren't the ones who'd put it there. I wanted to fight, to call out Mike, but Mateo's hand on my arm stopped me. Not now, he whispered. We'll handle it. That night, he came to my apartment, his face drawn. We can't let them win, he said, pacing. This is our life, Jamie. Our choice. But I was tired of fighting, tired of hiding, tired of feeling like I had to choose between love and belonging. Then what do we do? I asked, my voice breaking. I can't lose you, but I can't lose them either. He stopped pacing, his eyes fierce. You won't lose me. Ever. And the crew? The ones who matter will come around. We just have to show them who we are. He took my hand, pulling me close. I love you, Jamie. I didn't know it until you showed me, but I do. Those words broke me open, raw and real. I kissed him, pouring everything into it. Fear, hope, love. For the first time, I felt like we could do this, like we were stronger than the hate, the whispers, the doubt. The next day, we walked into the Firehouse holding hands. It was a small act, but it felt like jumping off a cliff. Elias grinned, clapping us on the back. Clara nodded, her eyes proud. Mike walked out, but Sarah stayed, offering a quiet, I'm happy for you. The chief didn't say anything, but he didn't stop us either. The town was slower to change. We got stares, heard slurs, but we also got support. A rainbow sticker on the diner window, a hug from the librarian, a nod from the mayor at the next fundraiser. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Months later, we got a call that felt like a test. A massive wildfire threatening Willow Creek. The whole crew fought together, Mateo and I side by side, our love a quiet strength amid the chaos. When we saved a family's home, the town cheered, and for the first time, I felt like we belonged, not just as firefighters, but as us. That night, I wrote in my journal, we're not hiding anymore. Love isn't a secret, it's a fire, and we're letting it burn bright. I left it open on my bunk, unafraid. The crew had seen my heart, and they hadn't turned away. Not all of them, but enough. Mateo knocked on my door that night, his smile brighter than the flames we'd fought. Ready for what's next? He asked, pulling me close. I nodded, my heart full. Together, we'd face the fire, literal and not, and come out stronger. Love wasn't easy, but it was ours, and that was worth everything.